Hello, everyone. My speech will be like the famous comedian says, everything readable into the middle. It's like his joke. How can I merge them? We would like to thank Steel Orbis. Last week they reached to me and we had a distinguished economist friend from the central bank. This carbon regulation on border and it is impact because it was a plan of last 3 years. On top of that, I will be talking then this sustainable green economy. I will be talking about them. So these are my personal works. Does not reflect on the opinions of the central bank. I put lots of graphics. Some of them will be fast. So if you have questions in between, you can also ask. First, there is this mechanism of carbon in the border because that in green transformation and Alexander Sirk mentioned the technical side. It is very much connected there in the green transformation and regulation in border, how it will be, what is expected to make in Turkey. Sustainability and ESG is very popular. Seems to be known very well, but what will be changed? What is the difference in the classical meaning? And it is directly relating your industry than carbon emission and economy. So how did it happen? Why we deal with these the international institutions and central banks? Why are they in this deal? So I will be talking about it. And later on, the export structure in Turkey, this mechanism, in what ratio, and it is structured in the credit base, in the micro. So we will just talk about them. It's not a typical central bank work over technical. So it was only last week I was mentioned, so I couldn't get the data, but I will try to show you how the system works. What do we mean by green transformation? So reduction of the fossil fuels, their damage to the earth, and there is this fossil fuels. So it's 98% is coming from there, starting from 1990s. It was there, and recently with this mechanism on Paris Agreement, developing a very clear policy. We can see it, and previously it was not binding. Still, Paris Agreement is binding, but this with Europe, with CBAM, there is a new structure we are going through. So there is benefit in knowing the history. What is our current situation? There is always this concerns where it's going. So certain, it's not only politics of certain intellectual, there is serious analysis. We can see, for example, Ankara is warmer than Barcelona, 10 degrees more, for example, or you can see the drought risk in Spain. There can be 1 or 2 degrees of increase in France, what they call a hot wave. So its impact and occurrence increases a lot. Previously, it was in 1 year, in 50 year. It will be now 5 year, then 3 years. So when you reduce all the risk from the insurance, all the banking, everything will be impacted. These analyses are long term, are always re-elaborated. These climate works are serious. You need to always read and update scenarios. And we started with Kyoto Protocol. And in 2005, it was this protocol and Paris Agreement 5 to 6 years later. And like you say, in the industry, the structure is also valid for the countries. When it was the first time, we were thinking, nice, we are in Annex 1, but then there are some certain responsibilities for developing countries. They need to provide finance. Then we said, let's wait then, as it is a voluntary agreement. In 2020, we ratified it, and then there has been serious developments. So what was the objective? To make it less than 1.5%. Since the industrial age, it is only 1 degrees increase. And we see its effect, and half a degree will be much more impact. These scenarios, keeping them under that, because 2 degrees, we are close to 1.5 degrees, doesn't seem to be realistic anymore.
Önlem alınabilir.
Hopefully we can get more measures. So under this scope, under Paris Agreement, we had the European Green Agreement. So it is regulating all the industries from data collection to all micro level definition of all the industries. So what was the objective? To catch them, for example, the greenhouse gas emission to be reduced by at least 40% and the renewable energy to be 12% of efficiency. That were serious. In 10 years, they made $1 trillion of investment they are planning for sustainable economy. They started after these budgets. Actually, the European Union didn't come to this in one day, because in 2005, when they put forward emission trading system, it was more than 10,000 company and all the industries, but it was a serious failure. Approximately 10 years by no way, EU emission trading system didn't work. The prices reduced, and without it was not a guideline. And then they integrated the experience. At 10 years of this experience, actually. So what happened? Europe always brought new regulations in the past. The wrong experience, they got lectured from it. So when compared to 1990, the net zero objective to be in 2050. So these are serious objectives. Until there should be a decline after that. How it can be performed, it depends on the consensus, and the CBAM started in 2021. What happened then? In 2023, they collected the data. It was a policy of wait and see as to how much we can gather, and European Central Bank took serious steps 2 weeks ago. The passing risks, how it will be collected, under which category, for what purposes. So the central banks, all the financial and economical variables, they will capture. So what's the biggest change, if you ask? That's it. Then after 2025, this SWAM will be started, and 2026, there are 5 vulnerable industries, and our study, we're looking at them. Cement, aluminium, fertilizer, because they are the industries with highest carbon emission. How the system will work? The system with SDM certificate and statement. So those certificates here will be put inside. So you can say measures regarding economy, so increasing the carbon emission in the world, and how it will be fought against. There are different carbon emission systems started in the last 15 years, but none of them worked. They are just indicators, but this shows that you should be doing like this. So it's 1999. It's like we are entering in the customs union. There were greater risks at time, but after that, our standards increased for practices, for countries. So if it is seen like that objective, there is this different funding mechanism of European Union, because from them they can solve their own emission problems from the second countries. However, on one side, you will be modern and you will reduce your carbon structure. You should be ready for the competition. As you show, the competition is getting hard in the world, and we have country-specific risks. And here, the certificate and statement for bill of lading more than 120 euros. And the TC system, this is not very clear. So what is the base for the tax? So I will be talking about it later. And we signed the national statement, and then we had the climate roadmap. So from different institutions, from central bank, etc., from other public institutions, we just work on what we can do. We had this directorate, we continue working, but in Turkey, we always said that the caravan is set on the road. It's not easy because you can do your taxonomy depending on your data. So you need to provide its infrastructure. And we need to have this culture of carbon footprint. And we had this climate adaptation institution, and we had short and long-term objectives, the national and international green financement. So green bond is not high in Turkey. Generally, the financial institutes does this, like the European Investment Bank, the World Bank are supporting this. In Turkey, these green bonds or sustainable bonds should be increased to export, and the biggest sectors to be affected, as you know, in the long term, in our zero carbon objective 2053, we are making the green financement. So it's based on climate law works. First, the Minister of Environment, then with Minister of Treasury. So we were waiting the European regulation. So in the upcoming period, the commissions will continue. First of all, we need regarding improving the database. They are working on how we can increase their figures, whether can they be indexed in the sustainable economy, the critical services industries. In those criteria, ESG, social communication model should be made, and I will be coming into its details. This is the one of the most important organizations, and here in Turkey, the scenarios, if we don't do anything, what happens? If we get measured, what happens? Right now, for 400 millions of tons, if you look at this, It was yearly emission calculated per carbon. If we don't do anything in 2050, it will be 700 millions of tons in this business as usual plan. But if we get measures within scope of those objectives, it can be dropping to 132 million. It is a serious decline. How we can make it? Every industry should be thinking about from bottom to top more than it's being our problem, but what kind of a measures are you supporting? Did you change your credit structure or management or and depending on the ESG, we will be thinking about them.
And this concept is actually sustainability. What do we mean by that? We mean that potential to grow without destroying around and by using your limited natural resources and mining the nature. And it means growing with that. It used to be sustainable development, but now it's all means sustainability now. What do we do? We have network greening financial system is about the central bank structure, structure created by them, and in the world, the central banks are following up the green transformation, the modeling.
And making infrastructure for analyze capacity is the future work of the central banks after the Paris Agreement. The central banks of France, Germany, Netherlands are creating serious data and make their reports. And we have 6 scenario, net zero 2010. So if we do all kind of works in a very good way until 2050, we are reducing our emissions, and from 1.3 if we can make still close, and between 1.2 and 2.5 emissions are being reduced. But if you don't do anything, then the emission amounts seem to be not changing, and cumulatively that's a problem because in the climate scenario, how the micro and micro works, there is a physical risk, chronic and acute risks, and at the end, when you look at the financial model, these operational risks and liquidity risk, for instance, for the highest cost are from the insurance, so we will be going to that word. On the seashore, the waves and typhoon. So you can have the cost, so you will not make an insurance. It can be meaning that though, so when you calculate the regional risk, yes, there is loss of float, but it's chronicle, it's not temporary. So I'm raising the insurance prices. There will be the all risks. So these are the actually we should be telling all these separately. And here I will not tell a lot about ESG. So these are company-based risks. So it's a performance-based. And here approximately 70 subcategories. Actually, they are seriously important following the greenhouse emission, follow them, and the structure of the social workers, the whether working with children, child labor. These are actually the sustainable development objectives. So there are serious changes in the government. For example, they want 25% women. So it shows that there is more awareness. How many company can do it? This is just a recommendation. So it goes until then. This structure they call ESG. You will say we have this independent. What is the difference of the ESG? Why should we do this? Because of these three factors for making an awareness. This is volunteer now, but it will be obligatory. 7 years ago, there weren't any external audit, but now it is obliged. And what does classical assessment, the ECG, ESG, and the surrounding issues, and when you look at them, the company being profitable does not show it as the in the left you have a profitable company and you will say okay, but these three topics with the carbon emission when you put them and the social and corporate institutes. So what do you assess? Classical assessment. You were doing SWOT analysis, vulnerable parts, but here is the scoring. There is this vulnerability, and then the risk is increasing. It's not easy to calculate, and the basic scenario is the climate from IPCC. The risk of increasing frozen and typhoon risks, and when you model all these, the sea water and then there is the main risks, and we compare the sector and the basic measures, and in the classic we have a scale of 19. Generally this is a company's, you have this credit and risk note. This is a little bit wider. What does the company do? What's the general trend from 1 to 5? For Sustainalytics, 1 to 5, there is the serious risk after 5. Now I'm getting a sustainability index. What are we working on that? In 2014, Borsa Istanbul, yes, it is very important. So they checked how they can make it one company. They just checked their size, and I looked 3 iron and steel company. What are they? Ereğli, İskenderun, and based on performances, they have serious scores, maybe 50 or more, and a certain standard companies, and then they shrink this. It turned into BIS 25, and then from ESG was added. They are not calling directly the ESG, but it's the most well-known company for Sustainalytics, a reporting company, and in the ESG model of, they also do it from outside because their analysis capacity is so serious. There are 150 ESG experts in European Central Bank because it's a very wide database and big data kind of data you need to work with, and that classical one structure, it's seriously different than that. In BIS 25 Ereğli Demirçelik ESG score, when you look at it, over 100 is 0.25. These are the points, and the lowest from the governance, depending on the industry. It's not bad. And then three BIST 61 companies, ESG definitive scores. And look at here, Kardemir's scale is a little bit low. Their score is 49. Iskenderun Iron and Steel, not in BIST 61, but higher score, 70. Maybe in the future, instead of BIST 25, the steel producers ESG score can be made, because you must see all of them from the industry, how the industry goes, more than saying just good or bad. You can make the sector industry index, but first priority to vulnerable companies. So we need to work on that. And look at the carbon emission in the world, how it is. We are always saying China 2020 to 2013, 31% to 34%. US is about 14%. And EU, despite all the measure, only can reduce 1%. Carbon emission will not drop. The measures are so, as we cannot change the cumulative structure in the main trend, there is a serious change in them.
Indian is rising from 7 to 9. The production mechanisms has made a difference. As we can see, carbon release is increased 18-fold. It's a serious increase. And how much it will increase will be determined by our measurements. As we can see, 80% carbon dioxide in Turkey, and when we look per the sector to Turkey, and I'm making the inductive reasoning, so this is the information of TÜİK. Turkish Statistical Institute, as you can see that 70% is caused by energy, then industrial processing, etc. And when we look at the greenhouse gases, it increased 157% increased, and if you look at that, it's increasing. This table shows many things. The productivity in Turkey, the labor added value of in Turkey. So when we look at OECD countries, the Turkey is the most working country. Our general trend is that Turkey is lazy, but no, we have the highest amount of work hours, but it doesn't matter. We are productive. And if we think about it in terms of carbon emissions, so if we look at the data, the sector trends, the efficiency, etc., this is how much carbon dioxide you consume to give a €1 added value. So how do they do that? Turkey is creating 410 gram carbon dioxide for a single euro added value. Of course, we are the 27th in 32 countries. We are, if you look at them, they are all the East Bloc countries, and we are stuck that, like the middle income trap. We have to reduce to 200, for example. If we reduce to that, we set competitive rights and the indicator will be shown there, then you will be able to get added value in your export to Europe. Of course, it has a lot of depth. You have to work a lot for that. So in the service sector, what releases the most? The production is 840 grams, then transportation second. The third one is not a sector, it's the household. And as you know, that manufacturing sector is high in the whole world. If you look at it as an average, the 400 is so high and we have to pull it back. So what kind of effects? We have to look at it. And it could be a bit of analyze. If you look at the export structure of Turkey 2021, we to European Union, our export to them were $103 billion, and with UK it's even more. And when we look at the export to more than 200 billion exports and less import and more import, and this is as it's shown in this graph. The carbon regulation it will be affecting the Europe. So we have looked at what is expected in our relationship with Europe. Our most export is to Germany, 18%, and the lowest is Luxembourg, and England, Italy, Spain, they don't change. Generally, they don't change. So these databases are about previous ones. Now I will continue on the 2021. Actually, our export was $221 million, and we had more import, and we made $106 billion export to Europe, and this is in the uh, data carbon regulation at the limit. What are the mechanisms of that? In 2021, when we look at it, in the first place, there's Italy in the product group, 11.5 billion exports we have, and this is the 5%, and 11% is expected to be subject to tax, and it is 10% in the general economy. When we look at the general sector in the SKDM sectors, and 78 is iron and steel, and iron and steel will be the most affected. So what is their export? 21 billion dollar, and they are going in line. These five sectors are the sectors that will be affected by the carbon regulation at the limit, and the steel and iron is prominent by far.
It's seventh or ninth in the world. Now let's look at Europe. In Europe, the share in the total is 8%, and of the 2%, and its share is 1%. So the ratio of iron steel is 73%. It's similar to world trend. So let's look from the country perspective to Italy. I should say the country we give most is Italy, then aluminum to Germany, and cement to Romania, and in the fertilizers, the other countries. I'm sorry, in cement, again, Italy, and in the fertilizer, Romania, and in the energy, it's very low. 172 millions of dollars are we exporting to Bulgaria, but it's about the companies are there. Okay, then, or in this mechanism of SBAM, the industries, their ratio, for example, to Portuguese, 1.2 millions of dollars of export we made, I'm sorry, and 0.5 millions of dollars. It's the SKDM. 1/3 of the products sold in Portugal are affected from SBAM. It's not for the size, but the country is KADM. The second one is Romania, and the third is Estonia. It's a different country profile. So how it is gonna work, this pricing mechanism, we don't know this exactly. In the EU regulations, it says according to the mechanism here, I will establish a carbon tax, whether directly or is there a ratio. So if you're a low emission company, we got your certificate as to how much you will be exempted. They are uncertain because between 2023 to 2025 will be data collection times process. There might be a change. And then there is the structure in 2019 when it was designed. Approximately it was 30 euros. And it was logical. But now it's 90. Alexander Sirk, when he calculated, it was the cost to us for tax has seriously increased. And will we make it from other countries, or there will be a certain reduction mechanism, but the end result doesn't change. The purpose is not to block them. If you make high tax, the system is blocked. What should be the proper tax? Maybe with a certain mechanism or bargaining, maybe an average mechanism pricing can be made. So there are uncertainties here. So this is the database is very strong. So it's from 2021. I will be updating it. In this industries of SKDM, in our budget, approximately 1 million company data we had, and in this 11.2 million, 25,000 in the steel industry, and most of them are micro companies. The ratio of the big companies are small, and it's the same in other industries, cement or fertilizer, aluminum. Their net sales within the country, including those micros, are not high. They are not high as well, as you are focused on export, and within the final product, it's not bad, nice, but your R&D expenditures are very less. When you look, cement is the lowest. They nearly do not make R&D. And the highest one in Turkey is in the electricity, natural gas, vapor. 3% of net sales are for R&D, and maybe you can make an additional work for R&D. Maybe you can make a joint pool, you know it better. And this transformation and its structure impact, when we put them all together, there is this uncertainty seriously. There should be a taxonomy, but in Turkey, we should make a taxonomy. We have a serious taxonomy of European Union. We should be integrated in that, protecting our own country by coming all together. Everyone should contribute into. It's not after it happens. We need to closely monitor it, and the carbon pricing mechanism now it's 90, and there should be who will be authorized, and we should set the responsible companies and taking data. We didn't go into that part, but we should have detailed information. You only calculate emissions. You need to develop calculation, and there is a serious change in the European Union structure. So the nuclear energy was not green energy, but is after the war with Russia due to serious energy gap. They say let's count nuclear as well. However, the plan was not that. Germany normally closed its power plants, but now they are reopening. America also using its energy from 10% in nuclear energy. So if we assessed with the SKDM, the production structure, there will be a serious change in the working conditions. And they will be affected more from the SKDM. If you adapt to new system, having less R&D will reduce the transformation speed of the industries. So in order to adapt to the system, you should know where it's from. And it doesn't affect employment. That's a good thing. And the credits, they need to make projects to you need green funds. And regarding that, the World Bank and the banks in Turkey, their allocated source should be increased. Turkey should find out its industry. Iron steel is okay. Its serious contribution to export of Turkey. ESDG ranking should be done. This is in a model. It is for you to reach loans abroad, for you to be presentable abroad, and to see your lacking abroad. It's a serious, even though it's volunteer now, but in Europe, the green finance study, if you don't have, then the loan interest rates to you will be much different. And Europe is preparing itself for iron and steel as a trend, whether it's very costly, this green production in the short time, high cost, but in the long term it will reduce, and carbon emission will be difficult. No one will get quotation. There is no quotation system. It was from 2015 to 2019. It was goodwill. So you need to make re-engineering, carbon capturing and storage. In England, actually, these things for the future, you go with a project to build a forest in the future, you will make emission reduction, then you can sell the certificate of it, just like in the famous Nasrettin Hoca, you go there.
Ona kadar geliştirilen projeler var.
It was just a local story, and you need to define very well your physical sector specific story, integrated reporting, and the carbon footprint. Do not say we are measuring, but It needs to be systematical, and it's a serious problem in the world. Where does it start? And regarding that, we have, for example, Tesla. One of them is very high and one of them is very low. One of them is just taken basis of the factory production, and the other one is the production process. So Tesla is automatic car producer. When you add the, and you should closely monitor the climate reports for what kind of things we are waiting. This is my presentation. If you have questions, I can take them. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ömer. It was a very detailed presentation. Is there any question? It was a detailed presentation. Can we get the presentation? Yes, the presentation is important. I guess no. Thank you so much. Thank you.